Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. I had a burst brain tumor. I had no idea I had a tumor because I'd always been healthy. It all began when I left work on a gorgeous September day to drive my then 12-year-old son to the dentist, a 30-mile drive. On the drive home, my truck was making a lot of noise. I told my son that I needed to check the engine before we got on the turnpike. I became blind as I pulled over to the side of the road, opened the hood, and started looking at the engine. I rubbed my eyes, hoping my vision would return once I was done with the truck. It didn't work. In front of my face, I could hear my son's voice. "What's up with your eyes, Dad?" he inquired. I couldn't see him, but I could tell something was wrong. That's when my heart began to race and I began to sweat. I had no idea what was going on. I was convinced I was experiencing a heart attack or a stroke. I advised my son to cross the street and call for help. That's exactly what he did. My legs didn't work as I tried to climb back into the truck. I collapsed against the vehicle fender, my arm unable to support me. I collapsed on the ground. People were running towards me. They inquired as to what was wrong. I replied that I didn't know, but that I couldn't see and that my legs didn't work. The men scooped me up, took me to their garage, and dialed 911. When the ambulance arrived, I was taken to the hospital for a CAT scan. The doctor then informed me that I had a burst brain tumor. They couldn't explain why it was bleeding and then stopped, but there was nothing they could do and I would die. My family was contacted and the doctor held my hand for 6 hours. They transferred me to a hospital in Pittsburgh and conducted the surgery I need because I was still alive. I was in a tunnel during my surgery. Moving along this tunnel required no physical effort because it was all done mentally. The more I considered returning to heaven, the faster I moved through the tunnel. I came to a complete halt when I stopped thinking about traveling upwards. I then extended my arms and placed my hands against the tunnel's wall. The walls were around 3 feet in diameter and made of black clouds. Then I considered moving again. When I got to the end of the tunnel, I saw the most gorgeous sight I'd ever seen. As far as the eye could see, there were large, lovely yellow daisies. There were no boundaries in the terrain. I was overcome with overwhelming affection, the likes of which I'd never known. I realized I didn't have a body and was hovering a few feet over the daisies. Then I noticed a spirit standing on the left side of the tunnel's exit. He was pointing to the middle of the field with his left arm. I saw a tree in the middle of this field of daisies as I looked closer. I knew then that this was where he intended me to go. The tree was roughly 3 miles distant, yet I was there in a matter of seconds. The size of this 20-foot wide tree astounded me. I was still floating over the daisies and stroking the tree's bark. When I gazed up to the tree's branches, I realized that the sky was completely white. It was white and so dazzling that looking at it practically hurt my eyes. There was no sun or color in the sky. I only saw the whitest, brightest clouds I'd ever seen. I then went through an emotional inventory. I wasn't angry, sad, or terrified. Nobody was missed by me. I was just overwhelmed with love like I'd never felt before. A spirit rushed out of the clouds and was heading right towards me as I was looking at the sky. She flew up to my face and looked me in the eyes. She read my soul by staring into my eyes for about 15 seconds. I knew everything about her in an instant, and she knew everything about me. "You have to go back," she said as she moved away from me. "It is not the time for you to visit the heavenly realm. You will return here when the time comes." "I don't want to go back," I told her. "Bodies are weighty and painful." "I know that," she said. but the heavenly parent wants you to return and accomplish his will." "Okay. What does he want me to do?" I asked. "You'll know when the time comes," she said. I really didn't want to go back, but she persuaded me to. She stated that the Heavenly Father wishes for me to return and conduct work for him, and that I would be protected while doing so. She also advised me not to be disheartened by the bad opinions of others. At that point, I realized I was unique and that my surgery would not kill me. I had no idea how I was going to be protected, but I knew it was for the best. We continued to converse for a little longer. She explained that our Heavenly Father does not want us to condemn one another, and that He wants us all to be equal. He wants for us to enjoy life, to be happy, and to be grateful. The most He asks of us is that we help each other. He desires that we all help each other more than we help ourselves. I observed a small pond of clouds among the daisies when we were conversing under this enormous tree. It was roughly 40 feet in circumference, and 6 spirits stood in the cloud pond staring down. Every now and then, one ghost would stoop over and pick up another. It would cradle and embrace it in its arms before looking up and flying quickly into the skies above. Then another spirit from above would fly down into the pond and take the place of the other spirit. This carried on for a while. I then inquired of the angel as to what they were doing over there. They were observing hospitals, physicians, and really sick people, she said, but they wouldn't intervene in the patient's diseases. After a while of talking with this angel, she walked away from me and flew straight up through the tree, not even avoiding a branch. She was gone in a plume of smoke. I realized then that it was time for me to leave. I didn't know how I was going to get back, but I knew it would be painful. I wanted to remember as much as possible, so I looked around and tried to recall every aspect. I noted that the daisies were devoid of bugs, cobwebs, bees, ants, or butterflies. There was no wind, no birds, and no sunlight. It was quite quiet and peaceful. In heaven, there was no such thing as time. I returned to my body. I was in excruciating pain. When I awoke in the recovery area, I spotted a man seated behind glass across the way. He would gaze at his monitors before looking at me every time I opened my eyes. After 3 or 4 repetitions, I realized he was observing me. He wasn't there after a couple more looks at me. Even with all the tubes and wires attached to me, the hair on my body was sticking up. I assumed they put something in my IV to induce this. I observed a lady standing there, looking down at me with a wide smile as I looked at my left arm. She had a long white hair that reached her elbows. Her face and cheeks were aged, but it was her enormous, bright blue eyes that shone out. I realized she was the cause of the hair on my arm sticking up. The entire room seemed to be charged with static electricity. "Do you know that your Heavenly Father wants you to come back and do work for Him?" she inquired. "Yes," I replied. "That's what the angel said to me beneath the tree, but she didn't say anything about what he wants me to do. She merely stated I'd know when the time came." She then pressed her finger to my lips. My entire body felt as if someone had dropped a 5-gallon pail of water down my throat and filled me up to my toes. Suddenly, all of the alarms began to sound. The lady smiled as she turned, walked to the door, and turned left. A few seconds later, the young man who'd been watching me entered the room and said, "Tim, you're doing fantastic. What occurred?" "I'm not sure," I responded. "I'm in a nice mood." "What happened to that lady?" "What lady?" he inquired. "The lady who was recently here with the long white hair," I said. "I didn't see anyone, but I'll go look if you want me to," he added. "Would you please?" I asked. "Sure," he responded as he walked out and to the left. "Tim, you're the only one on this floor and the doors are all shut," he stated when he returned. "You're the only person present." At that moment, I realized that everything I had experienced in heaven was true. The lady was yet another angel. I sensed something really amazing was going to happen in my life and that I would be protected. As requested by this angel and the priests in my church, I wrote a book about my entire experience. Please read the book to learn about the gift that these angels bestowed upon me.